Hey everyone, welcome to Skein Spider. I hope you're doing well. Today we're going to be making these fully customizable 5-minute flowers. So grab your hooks and let's get started. A few weeks ago, I showed one of my little orange flowers in a video. I believe it was my 5 uses for yarn scraps video. But someone in the comments asked if I could share the pattern, so that's what I'm going to be doing today. These little flowers are actually my go-to for when I'm creating amigurumi, and I just need something that's really quick and easy to whip up for a bit of decoration. So we're going to be making these today. What we're going to do is make the basic pattern, and then I'm going to show you how to customize that pattern. It's really simple, so let's get right to it. To make a flower, you're going to need yarn in a color of your choice, the correct size hook for that yarn, as well as a needle and scissors. I'm going to be making this flower using a bulky yarn and my 5mm hook, but you can use any weight of yarn that you like as long as you have the correct hook size to go with it. So we're going to begin by making a slip knot, and when you make this slip knot, make sure that the tail end is long enough that you'll be able to tie a knot with it later, because we're actually going to use this tail end at the end. So put your hook in, and then we're going to chain 31. We're going to begin working into the second chain from the hook, so that's going to give us 30 chains to work with, so an even number. And it's important to have that even number because we're going to be working in multiples of 2. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So in the second chain from the hook, we're going to do 1 slip stitch, so you're going to go into the chain, yarn over and pull through, and then you're going to pull straight through the loop that's on your hook. In the next chain down is where we're going to create our petal. So when I said we're working in multiples of 2, that's what our flower is going to consist of. We're going to have a space stitch, as I like to call it, which is the slip stitch. And in the next stitch, we're going to have the petal stitches, so where we make the petals. So we're going to do slip stitch, petal, slip stitch, petal, all the way down the chain. For this particular flower, all we're doing to create the petal is we're going to put 3 half double crochet in the same stitch. So we're going to yarn over, go into that chain, yarn over and pull through. This will leave you with 3 loops on your hook. You're going to yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. And then just repeat that twice more. Yarn over, go into that same chain, yarn over and pull through. 3 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through all 3 of those loops. Once more, yarn over into the stitch, yarn over, pull through. 3 loops, yarn over, pull through all 3. So that's our first multiple of 2 done. So we've got 1 space, 1 petal. In the next chain down, we're doing another slip stitch, so we have another space between the petals. The next chain is going to be our petal again, which is just 3 half double crochet in that same chain. 1, 2, and 3, and then we're just going to repeat that again. We're going to put a space between our petals, which is a slip stitch, and then a petal. And all you're going to do is repeat this same pattern of 1 slip stitch, 3 half double crochet in the next chain, all the way down the chain until you reach the end. When you've done the final half double crochet of your last petal, we're just going to slip stitch back into that same chain. And then just cut a tail, fairly long so you can sew with it. And we're going to pull up with our hooks, and at this point you should have something that looks pretty much like a curlicue. Then what we're going to do is unravel our curlicue looking thing and then curl it back up again, but we're going to be starting from the top, so this point here, and we're going to roll the petals that we've created back down along the front loops that we've left unworked from our foundation chain, and we're going to create a spiral. So I'm just rolling that up, and depending on how you want your flower to look, you can do this really tightly or you can do it a little bit loosely. That just depends on what you're going for. And that's already starting to look like a flower. Now all we need to do is secure it. So to do that, you're going to need your needle, and we're going to thread the longer end that we cut through that. And then to ensure the flower stays together, you're going to flip it over, and you're going to begin by pushing your needle under those front loops from our foundation chain that we didn't work into. And the trick here is to try and catch each one as you go across. Now this can be a little bit tricky, which is why when we get to the opposite side, we're going to pull that through firmly, and we're going to work down into the next front loop here, or you can go on the other side, it doesn't really matter, and we're going to do that process again. So you're going to catch as many front loops as you can back in the opposite direction, pull firmly, skip down another stitch, catch the front loops, and again. Now the highest point of your flower, these first petals that we did, they may be, or the front loops from those may be sitting a little bit high, so you might actually have to push your needle down into the flower a little bit to catch those, and then push it back through the other stitches, or the other front loops rather. And you're just going to keep repeating this back and forth several times until the flower is nice and secure. Before we finish off, what you're going to do is flip your flower back over and then just gently tug at the petals. So just take a moment to tug at all of them. And if some of them start to come loose, that means you haven't sewn the front loops together. So you're going to flip your flower back over and continue sewing through the back. But if your petals stay where they are, stay where they're supposed to, you're done and we can finish off. So you're going to flip your flower back over, and then from wherever your yarn is emerging from on the flower, you're going to emerge from the same stitch where our original slipknot tail is hanging. So we're going to push it all the way out there. Once you reach that point, we are going to tie the tail ends together. I usually do this 3 or 4 times so it's nice and secure. And how you proceed from here depends on what you're going to be using the flower for. If you're going to be using it to sew onto something else, you're going to leave a tail for sewing, and I'm just going to get rid of this shorter end. But if you're using it for something else, you can cut both tail ends. If you leave these a little bit longer, so say about that length or so, you can actually weave them into the back of the flower to hide the knot so that's not visible. But with that, our flower is done. It's really simple, but they're quite useful if I do say so myself. And now that we've done the basic pattern, I'm going to show you how to customize it to get different shapes for your flower. All these flowers I've done here were used using the same chain 31 to begin. So the first thing you can do to customize your flower is to change the number of chains that you use. So for example, for this one, I'm going to chain 15. What you need to remember when chaining is that the total number of chains you need to do is an odd number. so that when we work into the second chain from the hook, we have an even number of chains to work with, so we can do that multiple of 2 pattern, that slip stitch and the petal in the next stitch. Now I'm not actually making another flower. What I'm going to do is to show you the different things I've done with these other flowers. So after you've chained, no matter what number of chains that you did, you're going to first create the space. So I'm going to be using a slip stitch for my space chain. So if you're using a taller stitch to create your petals, so maybe you're using a triple crochet, you can use a taller stitch in the space chain too, so you might use a single crochet. For the first petal that we're going to do, we're going to be using a picot stitch, which is what I used to create this purple flower here. To do the picot stitch, well, I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here. To do the picot stitch, you're going to first single crochet into the chain after the slip stitch one, so the 3rd chain from the hook. And then you're going to chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Into the back bump of the first chain, we're going to do another single crochet. Now the back bump is this little bump here at the back of your stitch. So if you look at the stitches from front on, you can see the back loop and the front loop that create this little V shape. We want to work or turn those over and work into the back of the stitch here. If you can see those bumps, we're going to go into the bump from the first chain and then single crochet. After this, we're going to go straight into our next space stitch. So for me, again, that's a slip stitch, but for you, that might be a single crochet. And then in the stitch after that, we're going to do another picot stitch. Single crochet first. Chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. Into the back bump, which is behind the back and front loops. We're going to single crochet into the back bump of the first chain and then slip stitch to create our space stitch between the petals. So the picot stitch gives you a nice pointy petal, and I think these actually look really good if you do it in green, and they make nice little succulents. They're pretty cute. So that's one way you can customize your petals. Another way is like I did with this tiny little green flower here. I don't know how well you can see that, but it's actually got loops for petals. And how I did that was I again started with my space chain, which was a slip stitch, and then I single crocheted into the next chain. That was to begin, and after I did that single crochet, I chained 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. From this point, I single crocheted again into the base of that same chain. So I single crocheted, chain 5, and single crocheted back into the same chain. Slip stitch in the next stitch to create your space, and then we're going to do another loop. So you're going to single crochet into the chain first, chain 5, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then single crochet back into that same chain to complete the loop. And there's another way you can customize your petals. Another way to do so, if I slip stitch to create my space, is to adjust how many or what stitches you use. So for example, I can put 1 half double crochet followed by a double crochet, followed by a triple crochet, another double, and a half double, all in the same chain to create a petal. So I can put a space between that with my slip stitch. I could put 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 double crochet to create a shell. What else could we do? I'll put another space. You know what? Let's try a popcorn stitch. We'll see how that goes. So I'm going to do another 5 double crochet, 1, 4, and 5. I don't know how well that would work as a petal, but who knows, maybe someone can try it. It might turn out pretty interesting. So that's just several ways that you can customize your petal, but there's probably dozens of different ways that you could try it. So just play around, see what you come up with, and hopefully you find this quick, simple flower pattern as useful as I have. Just before we finish up today, I thought I'd share with you what hook, yarn weight, and also what stitches I use to create these flowers, just in case you'd like to create them for yourself. So this first one here, the little green one, for that I used a 2mm hook and 5-ply yarn, and the pattern repeat I did was a slip stitch, and then a single crochet, chain 5, single crochet back into that same chain, and then follow that with another slip stitch and just repeat the pattern. For the purple flower, I used a 3.5mm hook and 8-ply yarn, and for this one I did the slip stitch, picot stitch, slip stitch, picot stitch, and so on, and I did that for the entire flower. The yellow one is the one we created together, so I don't need to go over that one. For the pink one, I used a 4mm hook and 12-ply yarn, and for this one, for the first 7 pattern repeats, so the first 14 stitches, I did 1 slip stitch, and then in the next stitch, in the petal stitch, I did a half double crochet, a double crochet, and then a half double crochet, and I repeated that 7 times. And then in the following 16 stitches, so that will give me 8 pattern repeats, I did 1 slip stitch, 1 double crochet, 1 triple crochet, and 1 double crochet. This has the effect of making the top petals a little bit smaller than the bottom petals, so that's something that you could play around with and see what sort of effect you can get. And then finally the blue flower. For this I used a 3mm hook and 8-ply yarn, and what I did was similar to what I did with the pink one, except for this one, for the first 7 stitches I just did a slip stitch, 3 half double crochet in the next stitch, in the petal stitch, and I did that 7 times. And then for the final 8 pattern repeats I did 1 slip stitch, and then 3 double crochet in the same stitch. So it's very similar to the pink flower, except I was using the same stitch in the petal stitch rather than using 2 different stitches. So once again, play around, see what you come up with. If you come up with anything really cool, feel free to share it with me over on Instagram. I'd love to see it. And with that, that's all we have to do for today. So I will see you guys next week with another pattern.